I've always been curious as to how other people manage to play such a niche little game that many people don't actually know about, yet some of us have still managed to come together and have this game be a part of our lives. I'm going to read some stories, including my own, about how people found this game and what it means to them. What is your Populous story? My cousin won a copy of the game in a PlayStation magazine in 1999 or 2000. I remember he was stuck on level 5 and I was able to help him win the level by using the boat to sail straight to the gargoyle. I was enamoured by the game and begged my mother to get me a copy of it, which I was given for my 11th birthday. I managed to reach level 13 before the game became too difficult, with those pesky fire warriors and balloons proving to be too much. It will be a couple of years before I attempted to play the game again, this time getting all the way to level 23. I wasn't aware that this game actually released on PC, and I got a copy of it in 2003 or 2004. Having played the games like The Settlers and Age of Empires throughout my childhood, the game was so much easier to play than it was on the PlayStation. I crushed the campaign and immediately sought a greater challenge, finding my way to Populous Reincarnated. To cut a long story short, thanks to my cousin winning a gaming quiz and the superfans keeping the multiplayer scene alive, Populous the Beginning is responsible for the gift of a wife and 2 beautiful daughters. The Nightmare Tank wrote, "My story is a lot less extravagant. If I remember right, it was among a bunch of games my mother bought me and my 3 half-brothers, I am the outlier, for our new computer. While those 3 were dossing around uptown somewhere, I would use the computer for playing games. After an unknown number of run-throughs of Doom and Quake 2 on the easiest difficulties, I started scanning through the other games, settling on Populous the Beginning. I'd only seen one of my half-brothers play the demo beforehand, and I couldn't get my head around it first. Who this powerful lady was and why my braves were having a hard time combating enemy warriors, but some part of me had some intrigue and curiosity as to why I sucked so much at it. I was scuffing the levels super hard until like level 11 or so, where I lost interest the first time around. Eventually I revisited after learning there were cheats, and used those to get through the game. But even while doing that, I was still trying to get to grips with how the game actually worked, and how to make a proper tribe. Although I beat the game a couple of times with cheats, eventually I decided to see if I could do it without them. With many back and forths and a couple very bitter losses, I eventually made it to level 24, but couldn't get past it for months because of how intensely the 3 enemies would target me. But eventually I changed my tactic and removed them attack first due to their proximity, and managed to pit the Chumara and Dakini against each other and weaken themselves so I could move in and sweep one, then run the other. That was when I learned actual strategy, and I finally made it through. Level 25 was weirdly bugged though, and would automatically give me a victory after a few seconds for some reason. I always thought that was intentional until I got another copy of the disc. That's when I found I actually needed to play the level through and finish the job once and for all. And ever since those days decades ago, I still have this spark or nostalgia moment back to Populous the Beginning. So much so that I started looking it up recently and fell into this place. Now the memories won't ever die. Gold wrote, "A quite common story for me too, I think. I discovered Populous with a demo of the game present in a SimCity 3K CD that a friend had given me. I received this demo when I was 10 years old, but I played the 2 levels of the demo over and over again until my mother gave me the full game for my 13th birthday. In addition to the CD, my mother gave me the official game guide. With all this, I didn't have any particular difficulty to finish the game. We had very low speed internet, so I couldn't play much online at that time. But I always kept a special place in my heart for this game, and when I learned to do 3D, I always made a little fan art of the game to keep the flame alive. It's still an important game for me because I continue to make fan art. I like to try new campaigns made by the community, and above all I passed on my passion to my little brother who's been playing since he was a child. Now that we both have internet, we are doing the co-op campaign, and we both have brothers t-shirts with a different Populous mask. I have Dakini, and he has Chumara." Jimmy Hunter wrote, Populous the Beginning. The 3rd installment in a wonderful series of games. I already had a couple of years experience having both Populous 1 and Populous 2 Trial of the Olympian Gods on the SNES. But I was blown away by a full planet you could play on instead of a flat map displayed in a book. When I was a wee lad, my mum loved playing Populous on the SNES and Populous 2 on the PC. My dad bought Populous the Beginning for her on release day, but unfortunately she wasn't a fan of it being a real-time strategy. It was left in its CD case for a month or so before I was given the chance to try it out. I fell in love with it quickly, and after weeks of yelling in anger at the difficulty of a game I had never played before, I eventually managed to beat it. All level 25s conquered. I then attempted the EA online service, and good lord was it clunky and prone to crashes and errors. I played maybe a dozen or so matches on an account that was lost to the ages, and gave up on it shortly after people would argue constantly about restrictions and dealing with the trolls that would use multiple accounts to block huts. Fast forward to the early 2000s and we started to see custom single player campaigns evolve. I lurked around watching the posts on Populous and the many projects that never came to be. I tried out any ones I could find as they slowly became public. Then around 2010 I decided to give Populous another go. Played a few games with other newer players, got destroyed by the pros that played 2 or 3 maps and talk you because your PP base wasn't built right, and I decided to say screw the online bit again. Then we saw Multiverse Campaign come out with a Multiverse 2 launcher later on, and I decided to check it out. That's when I met the dreaded Tar Desert, which caused me grief for a long time. Then I went to YouTube and found Craig's playthrough. A few years later, and now I'm one of the recurring guests in the live streams and the Multiverse Tester. What a wild ride. GBA 1990 wrote, in my case, well, I was perhaps 2 or 3 years old when we bought the game in the early 2000s. It was during a video game campaign a newspaper did, so the game's box and CD are covered with the name of the newspaper, and Siemens for some reason. Out of the campaign we also tried out Beasts and Bumpkins, but never got the hang on it. Meanwhile, Populous was more fun to play. For some reason I used to like level 3 a lot, but would cry when I got attacked. Please remember I was 3. Anyway, as time passed I kept playing the game over and over until levels 18 and 20 were impossible for me to beat, and I would require the aid from my father to beat them. Didn't know about cheats yet. Somewhere around 2013 I learned about the Populous community, and I was baffled that there were people who would still play the game. Little by little I learned about the community, map making things, the Pop script, and ended up releasing the Odd Worlds campaign, which in the end encouraged me to pursue some programming related university degree. And well, here we are. Grew up playing this beautiful game over and over, and although I have been inactive at times, I've never forgotten the game and how it influenced my career. And of course, thank you all, as if it weren't for the active community, there would be no Populous nowadays. Doug wrote, I first came across Populous as a kid, maybe 10 or 11 or so to guess, when I saw the PS1 version in a game shop. I spent 10 seconds looking at the back of the case and decided it was a game I'd enjoy, as I was very into RTS games, still am, like CNC Red Alert and June 2000, a game probably even more niche than Pop. Being young and impatient, I didn't bother to do the tutorial and found myself struggling to understand how the game worked, and it was only with the help of a friend who knew the game that I actually beat level 1, and started to really develop my love for Populous. Having no idea about the PC version of the game or the multiplayer scene, I carried on replaying the original campaign until around 3 years ago when I discovered a YouTube channel called The Beginning, and realised there was not only a far superior version of the game, but a whole community that I'd been missing out on. It took me a while to pluck up the courage to join the matchmaker and test my skills against other players, but I'm really glad I did. As much as I love the PS1 version for the hundreds of hours I managed to sink into as a kid, being able to play online with other people is an entirely different experience in itself. I went from watching people like Babbo, Nisi, Craig, Lavenji, Keith, Jimmy Hunter and more to being able to play alongside them. The closest to starstruck I've ever been was playing a game with Lavenji early on in my matchmaker days. The fact that anyone still wants to play this game, more than 20 years old, is incredible, let alone that people work on this game to constantly improve it and keep the community alive. I'll be playing Populous until the wheels fall off. Kimber wrote, I first played Populous the Beginning demo, which came with a PC Gamer magazine sometime in 1998. I hadn't heard of or played the previous games, still haven't played them. Naturally, I asked my parents for the full game, which they bought for my birthday that year. I was 8 years old, and even still I was so sucked in by the theme of the game, the music, the art, the design was just incredible to me. Me and my school friend used to play for hours after school, both sat in front of a single PC taking turns. We also used to spend break time at school jumping up and down to flatten the ground and build imaginary huts, shouting Taka and Suka, casting spells at our friends who had no clue what was going on. We also made Populous-inspired clay masks in our class. Mine is still on the shelf in my mum's house. A year or so later I caught wind that there was an expansion pack. I couldn't find it in any of my local game stores, until one day my mum seemed to put her hand in a random second-hand game bin in an electronics boutique, if you know you know, and pulled it out saying, "Is this it?" I couldn't believe my luck. That's a key memory right there for sure. I still play Populous every few years, the vanilla experience that is. Despite finding the matchmaker scene a few years ago, I never touched it, as for me Populous is the zen childhood safe place. I like experimenting with the AI and making the entire first level a giant landmass with land bridge spam. It's one of those gems that will never get the mass admiration it deserves, and I'm kind of fine with it. I still have all 3 discs and will never lose sight of them. Thanks for keeping the community alive and taking it to a fantastic new place. Props to you and cheers. Skibo wrote, Populous Beginning was one of my first games. I think I first played the demo and then somehow found the original game. The overall vibe, soundtrack and feel of the game is unmatched. I then had some spare time during teen years and played a lot, for like 5 to 6 years I guess. Now nostalgic and nice to join a community. I have a few more stories on the Discord server that I can read. Before I get to that, I would like to hear your stories as well. You can join the Discord server, links are in the description, or also just leave it in a comment on this video. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we got this game when we were kids, and it's just got a special place in our hearts.